Hey! All right, before we get to really weird Irish signs, what day is it today, people? Flamingo Friday. It is Flamingo Friday. Are we ready? Wait, before we get started, have you guys acknowledged the rug? The raft? The Garfield doll back there in Scooby-Doo?
Yep.
Have we acknowledged? Have you guys acknowledged those things? All right, drum roll, please. Here we go. This is so. Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. Baby incinerator. I didn't show you the baby incinerator yesterday.
Not yesterday. Oh wait, no, I left early.
Yeah, the baby incinerator. That one makes me laugh. I enjoy it immensely. Wow. Okay. Where did we get? Did we get to the Mexican? Did we get to this beautiful valley? Did we get to this valley? All right, everyone. Act busy.
For math? It actually wasn't that bad.
Really?
I don't know if I could have like gotten them I could have gotten like them wrong, but like I could still do it. I don't like think I got it wrong. Like so it's like this story problem. Like,
All right, here we go. Mexican War. And so, what treaty? Oh, we just had this on the quiz. Phone away. Thank you. I give you your essays, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay. What treaty did Mexico? Oh, we haven't got there. What am I saying? I jumped the gun. We haven't got to that yet. We haven't got to the end of the Mexican War, have we? So, in the election of 1844, who was the Whig candidate? Who was Henry Clay? What was his program of tariffs, banks? Yeah, the American system. And who was the candidate who would be very much an image-related candidate? Young Hickory for the Democrats. James Knox Polk. What was James Knox Polk's slogan? 54, 40, or 5. What territory is that about? Oregon. And this is a real indictment on what kind of country we're going to be. Who would write the Pakenham letter that would become the positive good theory? John C. And who was the president who appointed him?
Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler. And lastly, let's see, we got that. Oh, who blew up? Well, the parrot blew up. Who was the Secretary of State? Yeah, Abel Usher. And so we got Polk had 4 things he wanted to do. California, he said, in one term. But he desperately wanted to be followed by a Democrat. And that would lead to the war. So before the Mexican War started in 1845, he sent down John Slidell. That's a picture of him. He would be a leading Confederate. This is a very southern government. He went down to basically try to get Mexico to give the United States 3 things. The Rio Grande as the border to Texas. Remember, Tyler signed it. So Tyler got it in there. They would forgive U.S. claims. Basically, U.S. claims, debt claims. American citizens had loaned Mexico about over $3 million. And the U.S. said, we'll pay it. We'll pay that. And they wanted to buy New Mexico and California. If you look at this map, this is what Mexico claimed as New Mexico, right here. That's orange, all this massive area, New Mexico. In pink, that's California. And Slidell got there. Now, Santa Anna had been ousted from power by allowing the annexation of Texas. So there was a military junta, basically a group of Mexican generals in charge now. And they didn't even respond. They just sent Slidell on his way, meaning an emphatic no. We will not do this. In fact, we don't accept that Texas is part of the United States. So Polk's initial strategy, his initial strategy in California failed. So, plan B, start a war. So Polk's idea was this, to provoke a war on the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande was what Texas claimed was their border. The Nueces is what Mexico claimed. So the point is, all this here is disputed. So even though Mexico doesn't acknowledge this is part of the US at this time, they say this is not Texas anyways. So what the United States did is they sent a regiment, a little bit under 1,000 soldiers, under a very competent general who was beloved by his men, well, at least because he would fight. His name was Zachary Taylor, a plantation owner from Louisiana. And he was based up here. They marched down to the mouth of the Rio Grande, little tiny village there. Today it's Brownsville, Texas, and to provoke the Mexicans. And the point is, if the Mexicans do not do anything and allow this, that would discredit the military dictatorship, and they figure they can take the land. If they try to push them out, Taylor out of this area that Mexico claims is theirs, that could be an excuse for war. So this is trying to gin up a war for conquest. Now, Taylor was a Whig, and he did not approve of this, but he followed orders. Taylor actually thought this was bad policy. But he began to aggressively patrol north and south of the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande is not very wide, and it's a really shallow river. In fact, most times of the year, you can cross the Rio Grande with hardly getting your knees wet. So it's really shallow. I was thinking about the border, the Rio Grande. I envisioned like a big, mighty river like the Mississippi. No, it's tiny. But they began to patrol. And it finally happened. It's called the Thornton Affair. Captain Thornton was leading a squadron, so about 16 dragoons. Does anybody know what a dragoon is? Yeah. No, good guess, but no. Good guess, but no. It's a fire-breathing lizard. And so we have these fire-breathing lizards down there. I know they're gone now. They're mounted infantry. So they're basically, they ride on horse, but they fight dismounted. So basically, for every four men, one holds the horses, the other three fight. That's what cavalry is going to be through World War I. For everybody's going to be using dragoons. And so back to this. They were attacked by Mexican soldiers. That is not in doubt. Captain Thornton's men were attacked. They fought them off and rode back to the main force near Brownsville. We know this for a fact. Polk would hear about this. Took about a week to get to New Orleans, and then the telegraph was connected. And that would be the excuse to ask Congress for the declaration of war. The second time in American history they declared war on Mexico, using this as an excuse. But to this day, we don't know where they were actually attacked. We don't know. So the state of Texas would put this up. So the spot where American blood was shed on the American side. But we don't know if it was north of the Rio Grande or south of the Rio Grande. Because if it was south, that was in essence on Mexican soil, and they had every right to stop a military incursion on their soil. Nobody disputed that. Now if it was north, that's disputed territory. We don't know to this day. But Polk told the American public and told Congress it was on the American side. I know for fact. So what did Polk just do? Well, because he didn't know. He just said it. Because there was like, I don't know, somewhere along there. He said an unprovoked attack by Mexico, which was also a lie. So they put that on there for a very particular reason. That's the mark north of the Texas legislature put up as now Texas State Park. The reason why is a young man who just got elected to the Congress from Illinois. Actually, he's elected the same year the war started, 1846. So we're talking in 1847. His name was Abraham Lincoln. That's Abraham Lincoln in 1848. He's a big man. He had massive hands, and really, really strong. I'll tell you about how he used to like to show off in the White House how strong he was. It's like little things that just do the kind of humorous. But Lincoln, unknown. It's what we call a backbencher. The United States House is very much by seniority. So people who are just elected, they don't have any seniority, so they sit in the back. It's a term for the British Parliament, backbencher. But he gave a speech, and it was about an appropriations bill for the war, a spending bill for the war. The war is declared. And he said, show me the spot where America belongs. Show me a spot. And he asked for a resolution on a spending bill to say, we will not approve this spending bill unless you show me the exact spot, because he's believing that the spot was south of the Rio Grande. And the war was a lie, the whole excuse. And he was opposed to slave power. He by no means was an abolitionist, but he was a free soiler. Everyone got that? Lincoln was not an abolitionist at all. This would be the only time he'd win office until he was elected president. He'd be elected in 46 and lose in 48. Now, it failed. It lost. But that would give Lincoln a little bit of credibility in the Whig Party. And when a lot of the Whigs joined the brand new Republican Party 7 years later, he was known, just kind of known, but not that known. What do you call a candidate who comes out of nowhere? He's going to be one of the, probably the best known dark horse in American history. No one who Lincoln won. He just had this idea of being honest. That's all. So, Abraham Lincoln. That is why on this right here, you notice this? The spot. So that's the state of Texas telling Lincoln to go to hell. That's exactly what it is. They hate Abraham Lincoln in Texas. So, this was done long afterwards. Heck, in Texas, in fact, all over the South, they wouldn't take $5 bills for years. I'll tell you my story about the $5 bill in Charleston, South Carolina. So, war is declared. Well, he had another plan. Polk was not done there. If it didn't work on the Rio Grande, he would gin up. Gin is another name for manufacturing. So gin up a revolt in California, like the revolt in Texas. And then they would vote against Mexican rule, asked to be annexed by the United States. And so they begin to encourage American immigrants there and Mexican citizens there in California to revolt. Now, most of the people in California, in Mexican California, live San Francisco and north, right about here. Sonoma Valley, Napa, Santa Rosa, this area right here. It rains a little bit more than Southern California. And the United States acted like we had nothing to do with this. But in fact, we did. An American Expeditionary Force, they were a mapping and exploration unit, a couple companies of the United States Army were just going to be mapping Oregon. And they just happened to show up in Sonoma a week before this revolt happened. Just happened to be there. Just coincidence. And they joined it. And they were led by this man right here. You know who that is? John C. Fremont. John Charles was a very popular name, even though that was not Calhoun's name. Calhoun's name was John Caldwell. His wife's name was Flora. So, and then a U.S. naval squadron under a commodore by the name of Stockton, yes, they say Stockton, California, helped. And they overthrew the local Mexican authority and proclaimed an independent republic, the Bear Flag Republic. They got a piece of canvas, and with some red paint, they made this map. They got stenciled in California Republic, drew a bear, the star like Texas, and they just kind of splash a red on the bottom. And you take out the Republic, that's the California state flag today. That flag's gone now. It's really unfortunate. In the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco that destroyed 80% of the town, it got caught in the fires. It was at the public library there. So it's really sad that was destroyed. So all we have are a couple black and white photos. Well, this happened after the war was already declared, so they became a republic, but everybody knew, yeah, the US is going to annex. There's no doubt. That's coming. So there would be an expedition under Stephen Kearny here, a couple things here, but the big thing is Taylor right here. And so the thought was, the United States Army was tiny, less than 20,000 men. But the thought was, we get a bunch of recruits and defeat the Mexicans in one battle. Remember I told you about Bunker Hill and the thought was one big battle will end the war? That's what they thought here. One big battle, Mexico will sign over the Rio Grande and this. That's the thought. So they waited for recruits. So it took a few months, partially trained militia. Tennessee would send so many volunteers for this war. To this day, they're still known as the volunteer state. So if you know anything about Tennessee, they're their mascot for the University of the Volunteers from that. And so, but the United States had a big advantage. And I didn't write this down, but do write this down. They had a military. The United States had a military academy. For the last 25 years, the United States have copying the French. Everybody copies the French when it comes to the military. Napoleon had a pretty big influence. But the United States created a military academy. So the United States had, that's what we have to get down, trained officers. Professional officer corps. Now, it didn't mean they were smart, didn't mean they made the right decisions, but they trusted their officers. They weren't corrupt cronies like Mexico had, who are based on, either they literally bought their officership, or they were just loyal to the dictator. That's always a problem with dictatorships. They pick on loyalty, not competence. Every dictatorship will do that down the road. It always comes to their downfall. But we had those trained officers. So for 25 years, the men trusted them. We also had better artillery, and that would be crucial. The Mexican soldiers fought with great courage, but they didn't trust their officers. So they started waiting, and eventually they crossed over the border. There'd be one battle at Matamoros, but they advanced in, the one big battle. And this battle was a 3-day bloody affair that could have went either way. The Battle of Monterrey. 3 days. So these lithographs are really popular, and I've never been there, but I've seen pictures. High plateau with mountains. It's really dry, but I guess it's really beautiful. Beautiful spot. Monterrey would be a pretty rough place to go to today. There's a lot of cartel violence there, so maybe not a good place to go right now, but a big victory, and Taylor's a hero. Taylor's a massive hero. And the problem for Polk is, he's looking at it twofold. First off, the Mexicans didn't quit. And secondly, he promised one term. He figured Zachary Taylor would be the next president. He's a Whig. Remember, Jackson won because he was a war, well, Washington won as a war hero. Jackson won, the war hero, and he had that great nickname, Old Hickory. You can't break him. Old Tippecanoe, William Henry Harrison was elected. And Zachary Taylor had a great nickname. Old, it's not old, it's got to be old. Rough and ready. Rough and ready, fights, he's rough, he's tough. He goes in a battle wearing a red flannel shirt and a straw hat. He doesn't care about anything but victory. So he had this great nickname for that era, Old Rough and Ready. And the Mexicans didn't quit. And so, Taylor's a Whig. And so he took Taylor's army away from him and gave it to another general. We'll get to that in a second. So if there's going to be a victory, he didn't want him to be Taylor. He doesn't want Taylor to ride this to the White House. Secondly, Santa Anna had been ousted from power. He's in the Spanish colony of Cuba. He's in Nevada. He's sitting in Nevada. He's watching this with great interest. He wants to get back into power. And he sends word to the United States. You get me back to Mexico City. You get me there. I'll give the United States everything it wants. Just get me in power. At first, the Americans ignored it that fall. But after Monterrey, the Mexicans did not quit. They said, Mark, We'll put it back in power. And the U.S. helped Santa Anna get to Veracruz. He and his over 1,000 wooden and other artificial legs. Yes, he had over 1,000 of them. And all his other gear, and they arrived at Veracruz. And Santa Anna, there he is, was met as a conquering hero. He arrived there, and the crowds cheered, immediately denouncing the military dictatorship. They went up the mountain. Remember, Mexico City, over 7,000 feet up. They went up the mountain and proclaimed him dictator. The men who overthrew him said, "We pledge loyalty to you." And Santa Anna's first proclamation, anybody want to guess? "I will defeat the American invaders and take back Texas." It was a terrible move. Santa Anna, despite he has problems, he was competent. He was much more competent. We look at it today and look at the relative power of the United States and Mexico today. The United States is significantly more powerful. We just kind of assume, looking back, the U.S. would win. No way. Mexico could have easily won this war, and our entire course of history could be different. And at a couple different times, they almost did. Everything would be different. So Santa Anna was a terrible mistake. And Santa Anna immediately took whatever troops he had and was going to knock Taylor out. And Taylor lost his best troops. They gave it to another general. And that battle is going to be the Battle of Buena Vista, February 1847. Buena Vista, beautiful view. Another beautiful place. That's one of the flags of a U.S. regiment there. Still survives. I just thought that was pretty cool. In 3 days, this battle raged back and forth. And a number of different times, the Mexicans, attacking with almost insane courage, just about broke through the American lines. But the Americans had some advantages, not just officers. This lithograph shows, okay, they weren't this close, but they want to put it in so you can see it. Do you see the cannon? Smooth bore, 12-pound cannon. Do you remember what grape shot was? Do you remember what grape shot? Do you remember, what is it?
It's shredded.
It's shredded? Grape shot about 12, 15 small musket balls they fire from a cannon. Well, they've improved that in the Napoleonic Wars, improved the killing of these to canister. Canister was, imagine a cylinder, about that big, about that long, filled with about 250 musket ball size balls of lead. Just imagine what that would do if you fired that from a cannon. What that would do to the human body. For about 100 yards in front, it just literally ripped bodies apart. Just ripped them apart, shreds. And that's, the Mexicans attacked with this, and they just got mounds of flesh. And their attack was stopped. It was so close. But he had other really good generals too. Or really good officers, I'm sorry. Or at least trained officers. In fact, one of the most experienced officers there was a West Point graduate who happened to be Zachary Taylor's son-in-law. His son-in-law would fight there. West Point graduate. Some of you might know this name. I think you should know this name. His name is Jefferson Davis. I don't know who Jefferson Davis was. He was just a minor character. He'd be the president of the Confederacy during the Civil War. He was Zachary Taylor's son-in-law. He fought well there. And Taylor came out of this even a bigger hero. It totally backfired. And guess who's going to be running for president in 1848? Old Rough and Ready. Old Rough and Ready. And so, the general that was given command of the effort to try to knock Mexico out and get that treaty was maybe the best general of this era. Winfield Scott. He'd be the hero of War of 1812, help reorganize the army and give some resemblance of victory in 1814. He was a brilliant tactician, a great organizer, but unlike old Rough and Ready, he was a stickler for discipline, like you had to, your perfectly shined shoes, even going into battle. His big thing was all the uniforms had 1 or 2 layers of brass buttons. They had to be shined. Your uniform emblem had to be shined and perfect. And that just aggravated the men. So his nickname was Old Fuss and Feathers. not quite as dynamic as old Hickory or old Rough and Ready, old Fuss and Feathers. And his plan was to attack at Veracruz, a little bit under 10,000 men, and then abandon its supply line like Cortez, the conquistador, conquered the Aztecs, and go up the mountain, all or nothing, and win. Nobody thought he could do it. There were a bunch of observers, like from Prussia or France or Britain, who were with Scott to kind of watch combat. And these were officers in their armies. No one thought it would work. He shouldn't have. But Santa Anna had lost some of his best forces here, and now he had to come back here and fight. 2 different times along the way, Santa Anna almost defeated Scott, and the United States would have lost the Mexican War, and our history would be totally different. But Veracruz was taken. They were able to defeat Santa Anna's forces. Luck, a number of reasons, going up the mountain. The last fortification was an old Aztec temple that the Spanish had built a fort over it, called Chapultepec. And at Chapultepec, a 2-day battle, the United States at first was stopped trying to take this old Spanish fort. And a captain who would be promoted, West Point graduated first in his class at West Point. His uncle was the man who first brought the resolution for independence back on July 2nd, 1776. He crawled on his hands and knees around the Mexican line in the hot sun and found a hole in the Mexican line. And they attacked on the 13th and took Chapultepec. His name was Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee, the commander of the most important Confederate army, America's probably most famous traitor. Robert E. Lee. Another guy fought at this battle for the United States was a young lieutenant, graduate of West Point named Ulysses S. Grant. He'd be commander of the U.S. forces at the end of the war, the Civil War, and become a 2-term president. Another guy would fight there. The other famous Civil War generals, George Meade, would command the most important Union Army at the end of the Civil War. Thomas Jackson, better known as Stonewall Jackson, would fight there. So one thing you have to get down is this. The Mexican War was really a training ground for the Civil War. So many of the officers at the Mexican War would fight, either stay with the United States or betray their country and fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. When Chapultepec fell, Santa Anna fled. And in that early September, Scott entered Mexico City. So Santa Anna's fleeing. After Chapultepec, they sent riders down to Veracruz. They took a fast steamboat to New Orleans and got the word back to Polk. We're going to take Mexico City. And Polk is sitting there, and his first thought was, okay, all I want is Rio Grande, New Mexico, California. Mexico City. Polk is sitting there thinking, oh, why stop there? Polk decided, and I did not write this down, but after this happened, Polk decided, let's take the whole thing. Let's take all of Mexico. Everyone got that? Take it all. He told his diplomat, a guy named Tris, who was going along with Scott, to demand all of Mexico, demand complete surrender. And what kind of states would the United States make out of that? Slave or free? All slave states. That's the plan. And Polk is like, got it, we can take it all. Now, when Scott and Trist heard that, they realized Polk had no idea what he's talking about. So they have less than 10,000 men trapped in the middle of Mexico City. There's no other American forces except for way up in the north. They're surrounded by millions of hostile Mexicans. Santa Anna is fleeing north to reorganize. He has no supplies. He is stuck in the middle of Mexico City, and there's no way he can get it all. There's absolutely no way. Is that on your watch? And so, with that, there's no way. And so, they ignore it, thankfully. This reminded, in fact, Scott's first thought was, does anybody know who happened to invade Russia in 1812? Got all the way to Moscow. Couldn't hold it. Who did that? Napoleon. Took Moscow, the religious headquarters of Russia. It wasn't the capital, but it was the religious center. And couldn't hold it. And Scott's thinking, oh, we'd be like Napoleon. We might lose the whole war again. But they got a break. Santa Anna was fleeing north. And Santa Anna couldn't just leave his stuff. He had over 40 wagons with his own personal gear. So this slow wagon train, instead of him going fast, was taking all his fine wine, his rugs, and wagons of artificial legs. He had legs for every occasion. He had wooden stumps. He had legs that were carved for fine occasions. He had a leg for when he would review the army. He had a leg so he could mount a horse. He had a leg when he would go on board a ship for the tiny little Mexican Navy. He had legs made out of ivory. He had gold encrusted legs. He had actually a solid gold leg that would have been far too heavy to even use. He had diamonds, ruby encrusted. He had a leg that was a cannon. You could load the cannon and fire the leg. And I'm trying to figure this out. Bang! Yeah, that would feel good on the stump. And he had one that was a sword that you could take off the sheath and like fight, I guess, like this. But I'm thinking about this. If your leg's a sword, okay, you might get one step, but that next step, you're going to go down really fast, right into the ground. I guess he did it because he could. And so, dragoons captured him. And they immediately went to the wagons, and it was like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. And this might shock you, but like the gold leg and the diamond encrusted legs, those disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. Weird, huh? They're looting everything. They're grabbing the legs, the wooden ones, they're running around. They just took everything. And they were playing baseball with the leg as a bat. Baseball, not quite the same rules, but baseball, they're playing, so that whole thing. Somebody spirited about 10 of these wooden legs back to Veracruz and shipped them up to a friend. An officer got them up to a friend in New York City. And they carved something out of them. 1,000 of them. And soon thousands, because no one knew where they came from. This would become the biggest souvenir of the Mexican War. Anybody know what they carved out of these legs? Huh? Yeah, Santa Anna toothpicks. Now, toothpicks weren't like a toothpick today, that single-use one. Think about like a little bit thinner than a wooden pencil, and you would use it. You'd like whittle a point, use it as a toothpick, and then whittle another point. They got a few Santa Anna toothpicks at the Smithsonian. And so, they captured Santa Anna. And Santa Anna's like, I'm not going to sign it. What are you going to do? You're stuck in the middle of Mexico City. And that is why they ignored Polk, and in 1848 would sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And that's Nicholas Tritz, the man who signed it for Polk. It would be ratified by Congress. You see the glass negative broke. And it had these three parts to it. First off, the Rio Grande became the border. So Mexico accepted that border and therefore accepted Texas. Number two, California, New Mexico was ceded. Ceded means given to the United States, and this is going to be known as the Mexican Cession. So we got part two. And part three. The United States didn't want to look like this was a war of conquest. So they wanted to look like, hey, we just happened to buy it after we won the war. So they would pay $15 million and then pay back U.S. claims for debt to Mexico. So about a little bit over $18 million. The United States purchased that. Not a bad deal, huh? So the United States got all of this. And that would be the Mexican Cession. One more thing we're going to have for the bell rings. One more little tiny part of the continent of the United States would be bought 5 years later. 5 years later. So I'm just going to finish up all the continent of the United States. We have three main parts. It's called the Gadsden Purchase. This little piece of flat, high plateau desert, the U.S. would buy in 1853 for $10 million. That's the last step. The Gadsden Purchase. $10 million. The United States felt guilty about literally stealing the other areas. Because what's going to be discovered in California actually was already discovered. Yes, fingers, gold, yeah, can wall. I haven't forgotten that jokingly. Yeah. None of us has forgotten that. Thank you. We're gonna watch this thing. It's a crime movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Won 7 Academy Awards. No. Find your time. Yeah. I don't remember that. I like the show. And first 3 seasons are really good. Yeah. First every show. Have a good weekend, everybody. That's asking a lot of us. Yes. Write stuff. Grab that pen. Write stuff. Goodbye, everybody. No problem. We'll see you after the weekend. And Willow, Saturdays, just Monday, right?
Yep.
No biggie. We made it. We made it to quiz day.
I had to. Oh, what?
It is quiz day.
Oh wait, I didn't read this. If you pay attention during lecture, I never. It's a tutor. How much time we could do this is again.
It is Flamingo Friday. Are you saying it? Flamingo Friday.
I mean, she's kind of a she is good at texting.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, and also I did not.
Who wants a quiz? Half sheet of paper.
It's like some really good stuff, and he was like, I didn't like that article. I was like, well, because I gave him another one, and it was a lot more like wide one way. And I was like, I sent him that, and then I don't remember what and then I had add a person on it. He was like,
I can't remember that. I just recited the Apostles' Creed.
Half sheet of paper, 1 to 8. 1 to 8. I don't think you have that skill set. Go, go, run like the wind.
Okay, what do you have?
Quiz day. You gonna take a quiz? What? You're gonna write me a letter of recommendation?
Oh, I think it was the Mexican
You like all my recommendations?
I know.
I'll get it All right, half sheet. Oh. So, you want to take it?
No.
Do I care what you want? Be my presence. I'm kicking you out. I've had enough. Half sheet of paper, 1 to 8. Let's go, people. We're burning daylight. Look at the daylight. There's no daylight now because of you. because of your entrenchments.
Are you
Sweeping up the mess around here. It's clean sweep, people. One to 8. Are there any questions from the reading? By the way, the figure I crushed, I think this is going to be problematic.
I feel like it was.
It's going to give us.
What is that? It doesn't actually know.
There's 2 bucks.
Like on the. Never mind. They don't want to. Even though I love it,
Different girls. Taylor was in the north, and then Scott's the one who actually won the final bout. Well, he was man. Yes. Ah. Sorry. Sorry. Who is this? Oh, I see it now. I'm scared of me. Her, someone's in my class. Very, very. You know, they really like. All right. Who would like? Yes. Let's go, Clayton. You're late. Let's go. Let's go. Chop, chop. Half sheet of paper. 1 to 8. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, I've answered it. All right. Let's do it. Yes. We have 2 people thinking alike. You guys want a bonus?
Yes. Yeah.
How does it feel to really want something that's not?
I wouldn't know because
Well, I guess you're gonna find out.
that's really
It's Friday now.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna. Oh, I've tried. So what you gotta do is you gotta get near the top, and then you gotta be very careful. Spread it every day. I know. Walk it over. All right. Quiz is out, people. Quiz is out. Yes. If that's what it is. Okay. That's actually. So it started here. If it hurt, I would. Because I know you think it hurt. I know. I've had to do that too. But thank you for offering, yeah.